صل على رسول النبي الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيد المرسلين يا خاتم النبيين يا شفيع المذنبين يا أنيس الغريبين يا رحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم. So last week we were talking about Imam Musa Kadhim, and so today inshallah we'll talk about Imam Ali Rida, who is the son of Imam Musa Kadhim. So, if you remember, Imam Musa Kadhim, eventually was jailed. He'd already been jailed twice before. The predecessor of Harun had jailed him once for a short time, and then Harun initially had jailed him for a year, and then in the end he had jailed him for about 5 to 6 years. Because these are people who, as far as the kings are people who fear anyone that they think is a threat to their kingdom. And not to the kingdom, but their kingship, rather. They knew who they had stolen, their position from, because they had stolen their position from Ahlul Bayt. And they knew that the hearts of the people were with Ahlul Bayt. It's interesting that one time, Imam Musa Kadhim was in the Haram, and Harun was there as well. And all these people were gathered around Imam Musa Kadhim. No one's paying attention to the king. Of course, they call themselves Khalifa, Harun Rashid. And so Harun, he asked Musa, he says, Musa Kadhim, he said, do you have any aspirations to become the king? And he says, look, you are the people, you may have authority or be the king over the people's bodies, but we are the kings of their hearts. So this gets back to those 6 qualities that I will keep mentioning over and over again. And those 6 qualities that Imam Zain al-Abidin a.s. mentions in the masjid in Damascus, as far as what the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon Ahlul Bayt. Ilm, knowledge. Hilm, forbearance, which includes sabr. Generosity or sakhawat, the eloquence, fasahat, the shuja'at or the courage, and love in the hearts of the people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the love for Ahlul Bayt within the hearts of the people. This is a natural fitrah. This is the natural way. Anyone who deviates from that, who shows animosity toward Ahlul Bayt, is going against the natural order, which tells you that, it's like a thief. When he steals the first time, there's that voice telling him, oh, I'm doing something wrong. But when he keeps doing it, he has destroyed that voice. That voice is that natural order. It's the natural way. So the same thing with the love of Ahlul Bayt, this is the natural thing. This is what humanity is naturally inclined towards. And so this is basically what Imam Musa Kadhim is telling Harun Rashid. That this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within the hearts of the people as a natural thing, as an innate thing. So now coming to Imam Ali Rida. So, Kadhim, of course, is the laqab or the title of Imam Musa Kadhim. Kadhim means the one who controls his own anger. Sadiq is the title of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, which means truthful. Baqir is the title of Imam Muhammad Baqir, which means the one who opens the doors of knowledge. He breaks into the depths of knowledge. Zain al-Abidin is, of course, Imam Zain al-Abidin, who is the one who, is the zenith or the pinnacle of the worshippers. If you look at these titles that they're each given, they each, in actuality, have those qualities within them. They were all truthful. They were all people who controlled their angers. They were all people who opened the gateways of knowledge, the floods of knowledge for the people. All people who excelled in their worship. When you look at these people, the scholars, the Ahma or the pioneers of Ahlul Bayt, when you look at them, they all had these qualities, but each one is given, this title or their various titles because that's what the people were able to see within them more clearly. So, Rida means the one who has attained the pleasure of Allah and His Messenger, which again is all of them. But, when you look at him, it was something that just stood out based on the environment that he was in. And the character that he had to portray based on the environment that he had to deal with. Yeah. So he is born the year 148 Hijri. So this is the same year that his grandfather is martyred through poisoning. And his father, Musa Kadhim, at this time is somewhere around 20 years old or so. So he's born at this time. He has the honor of being with his father for 35 years, which is very unusual for when you look at the scholars of Ahlul Bayt. Imam Musa Kadhim spent 20 years with his father. That was also a long period compared to some of the others. So Imam Ali Rida will be under the direction and I'll get to this later on, under the direct supervision and direction of his father for 35 years. So that's important to know. He studies under his father. His father also has him study under other scholars. And so by the time he is 20, he is already giving dars within the Masjid of Rasulullah. So he's giving lectures and teaching a class, of fiqh, hadith, various knowledges of sciences of Islam, along with other sciences as well, in the Masjid of Rasulullah. And you have to understand the time frame that this is. This is also the time frame that Imam Malik rahmatullah alayhi, is also giving dars in the Masjid of Rasulullah. Imam Malik has the honor of learning from 4 of the Aimma Ahlul Bayt, 4 of the 12 of these distinguished scholars of Ahlul Bayt. So he studies under Imam Muhammad Baqir. He learns from Imam Jafar Sadiq. He learns from Imam Musa Kadhim. And, under the excuse of teaching Imam Ali Rida, he also learns from Imam Ali Rida. So these are people, again, who are scholars in their own rights, but they know where true knowledge is. And they know that you can never stop learning because the depths of this knowledge, it's not something we can even imagine. So this is, Imam Malik is studying under him, or learning from him. He's teaching his class, but at the same time learning from Imam Ali Rida, for a few years. Not long, because by the time he's 20, this is the year 168 Hijri, Imam Malik passes the year 179. The last 4 or 5 years there, he's not coming to the masjid because of health issues, but because they had tortured him because of his support for Imam Muhammad Nafs Zakiyah, as we've talked about before. So Imam Muhammad al-Nafizaki, again, Ahlul Bayt, scholar of Ahlul Bayt, and this was the person whom Imam Malik gave bay'ah or allegiance to, and this is why he was tortured. Shoulders were dislocated, he was literally tarred and put on he's shaved and put on a donkey and backwards and rode around and drug through the streets of Medina Munawwara in that manner. All because of his support for the household of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. One thing to note here, 148 is when Imam Ali Rida is born. Imam Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi is born 150 Hijri. He will be martyred the year 200 Hijri. Okay? And this will be important. The various things that I want you to remember as we go forward. Another thing to note here, this is a few years ago, I was reading this website, some Saudi Wahhabis, question came up, about the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and whether, we can take knowledge from them. So just remember that question. The Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and can we take knowledge from them? The answer that was given was, the guy quoted Ibn Taymiyyah, and in that quote he says, Ibn Taymiyyah says that they are all, they were very good scholars, until, and that their knowledge is undisputable. When you get up to Imam Musa Qadim, after that, these were people who were very pious, but maybe not that knowledgeable. So this was the explanation that's given. So now, when we look at Imam Ali Rida, again, by the time he is 20, he's teaching the course in these classes in the Masjid of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, at a time when you have scholars like Imam Malik also teaching. So if there was any doubt about his knowledge, somebody would have questioned it. No one questions his knowledge. Everyone who speaks about his knowledge talks about how comprehensive his knowledge is. So he's teaching for a while. And so if you remember, Harun Rashid is the one who has his father martyred. And these are a lot of things that are going to bounce around here. That's going to happen again when he's 35. In the meantime, he's teaching, and there is a point in time, shortly before Imam Musa Qadim is jailed, where he calls 17 members of Ahlul Bayt, of the household of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Some from the lineage of Imam Hassan al-Islam, some from the lineage of Imam Hussein al-Islam. He calls them, and he says, and he lets them know that his heir to his knowledge, the heir to his position, is this son, Imam Ali Rida. So he's the only Imam when we talk about the 12 Imams of Ahlul Bayt, and of course the 12th is Imam Mahdi, who has not come yet. But when we talk about the rest of them, he's the only one who, during his lifetime, already appoints his son to take over his place, his position. Of course, not long after this, he's imprisoned. Even though, and most of the time that he is in prison, he's in solitary confinement. So, as we spoke about before, when you look at a teacher, if you want to know how good a teacher is, you look at his students. So when you look at the students of, just like we spoke about when we spoke about Imam Jafar Sadiq, hundreds, thousands of students, all of whom excelled in their fields. When we look at Imam Ali Rida, we see the same exact thing. Thousands of students, all of whom excelled in their fields. There's this famous personality amongst the Tasawwuf, and especially amongst the Qadriya Silsila, Ma'ruf Kharqi, rahmatullah alayh. So, Ma'ruf Kharqi, rahmatullah alayh, is the alhamdulillah. So, Ma'ruf Kharqi, rahmatullah alayh, he is the Sheikh, the Murshid of Sirri Sakti, rahmatullah alayh, who is the uncle, maternal uncle, and Sheikh and Murshid of Junaid Baghdadi. And then that brings you on down, to eventually to Sayyid Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahmatullah alayh. Ma'ruf Kharqi was a Christian to begin with. His parents sent him off to study the religion. And it's interesting, when they sent him off, they said that whatever he comes back as, that is what we will accept, because he was a very intelligent young man, very analytical thinking young man. So they thought that, whatever he learns, he's going to analyze and go over, and whatever conclusion he comes to, we will accept that as well. So Ma'ruf meets Imam Ali Rida AS, and Imam Ali Rida gives him da'wah, and he accepts Islam at the hands of Imam Ali Rida, and then also becomes a disciple of his. And then when he goes back home, he knocks on the door. His father answers the door, and the first thing his father asks him is, "What is your religion?" And he says, "I am Muslim. My religion is Islam." And both of his parents immediately accepted Islam, at his hands. So, this is another gift that Imam Ali Rida gave to the Ummah. People like this. And again, that number, you can just go on and on. So the other interesting thing is, Harun, who imprisons the father of Imam Ali Rida, and after 5 or 6 years in jail, has him poisoned. And of course, the poisoning was, we don't know how he died, but everybody knew what happened. And especially Imam Ali Rida knew what happened. But still, for the good of the Ummah, you'd have people that would come to the court of Harun. You'd have atheists and other religions come and debate. And you'd have situations where, the scholars that Harun had placed in front of them would get stuck, and they couldn't respond appropriately to the questions, or the arguments that these other people had. Who would he call in that situation? Imam Ali Rida is the one who would come and bail those scholars out. And give responses and reasoning that the other side could not dispute. So this wasn't just an occasional thing, this was a regular thing. One time he enters the court of Harun, and Harun, of course, you have that guilty conscience. Everyone, so, when you do something bad, you have that guilty conscience. Harun, was no different. And so he enters, Imam Ali Rida enters the court. Harun exits through another door. And Imam Ali Rida says that, today he's running from me, but where will he go in the end? And I'll get back to what he meant by this when we come to the end, inshallah. So, Harun eventually dies around the year 192, 193 Hijri. Harun has many sons, two very prominent sons. One whose name is Amin, whose mother is Zubaydah, who is the cousin of Harun. So she's Arab, and so this is the mother of Amin. The other is Ma'mun, whose mother is Persian. Of course, at this time, if you look at the Muslim empire, it not only consists of Arabia, Byzantia, and Persia. And you could, Persia was not a small territory. And if you also look in Persia, and Persia at that time was, it included what we think of Iran today, part of Iraq, basically from the Euphrates east. And it also included Khorasan, which is part of modern day Afghanistan, Sindh, and Uzbekistan, and all these areas were contained within the Muslim Empire. I think somebody forgot to mute their phone. So now, so what Harun does in his lifetime is, he's ruling over different people or different peoples, and so he basically gives the governorship of most of the Arabian provinces or the Arab provinces to his son Amin, because the wazirs of Harun that were Arab liked Amin because he was Arab. The wazirs of Harun that were Persian liked Ma'mun, and Harun gave Ma'mun basically governorship of the Persian territories, which included Khorasan and all these other areas, because Ma'mun's mother was Persian. So if you look at also historically at Persia, at Khorasan, this was always a kind of a circle of learning. You have many, if not most, of the muhaddithin are from that area. You look at Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Imam Tirmizi, and Nisai, they're all from Khorasan. You look at Abu Dawud and Nisai, they're from Iran. You look at Nishapur. Nishapur is in Khorasan. Okay. So you look at Imam Hakim. Imam Hakim is from, his actual name is Abdullah Nishapuri. He's from Nishapur. And Hakim is his title. So one thing, we've talked about this in the distant past. I'm going to reiterate this point. And I'll reiterate several points and try not to say that I'm reiterating them. But, in the scope of the muhaddithin, the scholars of hadith. Muhaddis is a general term for any scholar of hadith. Okay? You have those that are given the title of hafiz. Hafiz we think of as, a memorizer of the Quran. But when you're talking amongst the muhaddithin, for them hafiz means someone who has memorized 100,000 hadith. The body and the chain. So the body may be the same, but the chains may be different, and those are considered different hadiths. Okay. Then you have what's known as hujjah. Hujjah is someone who's memorized 300,000 hadiths. Again, body and chain. And then you have hakim. Hakim is someone who has memorized 1,200,000, 1.2 million hadiths. Body and chain. So this is Hakim. So Imam Hakim is from Nishapur, which is in Khorasan. So even at this time, so this is before Imam Hakim, and actually just before Bukhari and Muslim, you have thousands of muhaddithin in Khorasan. And so, when Harun dies, he appoints Amin as his heir overall. Mamun is still supposed to control Persia, but the overall kingdom will be under Amin, which, lasted for about 3 or 4 years. Amin was not a very effective ruler, so to say. And especially, when the kingdom gets this big, and you have all of these wazirs, and all of the wazirs, when they talk to you up front, they say, "Oh yeah, you're doing great," while they're cutting you down from behind, and kind of trying to position themselves in a so that they can take advantage of situations. Yeah. So you basically have kind of a civil war that breaks out, and you have 3 of the sons of Harun that are involved in the civil war. One of them really not very effective, didn't get anywhere, but the other 2 are Amin and Mamun. And you have within the kingdom a lot of people who support Ahlul Bayt. Again, this is who they stole the kingdom from. So in order to gain support of those people, and also to gain support of the scholars, who many of which were headquarters in Khurasan, what Mamun does is he comes to Imam Ali Rida and he offers him the kingship, the rule. Of course, they called it Khilafah, so we want to make you the Khalifa. Now, Imam Ali Rida knows very well what's going on. And he says, "No, I don't want this." The interesting point here is that if he had accepted it, then he would have been dead a lot sooner. Because if he had accepted it, then they would have said, he's aspiring to be the leader, so we're going to, kind of put a front on it and then eventually get rid of him. But, so then he comes to him and he offers a daughter in marriage, whom Imam Ali Rida accepts. So he is married to Mamun's daughter. But he also makes him his heir apparent. So if anything happens to Mamun, then Imam Ali Rida will become the leader. And this he accepts, not willingly though. So that you have to understand, because he was asked later on, why did you accept this? And his response was that the same coercion that forced my father Ali, Karamallahu wajh, to accept the arbitration is what has forced me to accept this. Because if he hadn't accepted it, then that would have caused more issues for the Ummah. So they sacrificed themselves for the good of the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now, when he names him this, and struggle is going on, all of these scholars now come behind the support of Mamun, which is what Mamun wanted. So Mamun eventually wins the position that he wants. So he now is the, the undisputed leader. Like they have, certain classes, this organization, that organization, and then they have the fight, then become the undisputed, heavyweight champion or whatever. So Mamun is the undisputed leader now. And according to him, of course, he's the undisputed Khalifa. Imam Ali Rida, again, he's named heir apparent. So when he's named this, you have, of course, people that are within his court, the court of Mamun, who are very jealous of Imam Ali Rida. And so one day what happens is, that, you have various guests coming and meeting Mamun, coming into the court, and you have, the wazirs, as somebody comes, they open the curtains, and the person comes in, and as they're leaving, they open the curtains, give everybody their protocol. So when Imam Ali Rida came, they had decided, we're not going to give him any protocol. But as he starts to enter, there's a puff of wind that comes, and the curtains open for him, and he enters. And he has his meeting, and then as he's leaving, same thing, that puff of wind comes, another puff of wind comes, opens the curtains for him, and he leaves. So those who were able to get beyond their egos and their jealousy, they now start giving him the appropriate protocol. Mamun, because once he wins the victory, you got to take your, the victory lap. And this is what, a lot of these kings and leaders would do back in the day. Now, of course, they just get on TV and blah, 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 but back then, they would take their victory lap, go through the areas that supported them and give their fiery speeches and, the motivational speeches to keep people behind them, and I'm going to do this for you and that for you and all this other stuff. So when Mamun goes, of course, he knows that the people supported him because of Imam Ali Rida. And especially when he's going to take this victory lap into Khorasan and, and teach, and basically, show the people who he is. Well, he knows that they're going to expect Imam Ali Rida to be there. Because again, he's the only reason they really supported him. And it's too early to kind of shove him to the side, because if he shoves him to the side right now, then, well, these same people that supported him will now quickly turn against him. So what he does is, they go through these areas, and, Imam Ali Rida, riding his camel, is traveling. When Imam Ali, and everybody knows that he's coming. And the interesting thing is that whenever they would get to an area where you have all these scholars, nobody's paying attention to the king. Everybody's paying attention to Imam Ali Rida. So when he enters, Nishapur, the first person to run up to have the honor of holding the reins of the camel of Imam Ali Rida is none other than Ishaq bin Rahway, rahmatullah alayh. And you have to understand who this is. Ishaq ibn Rahway, rahmatullah alayh, is a very respected scholar amongst the scholars of hadith. And he's not just any scholar. He is amongst the teachers of Imam Bukhari. And not just any teacher of Imam Bukhari. He is that teacher for whom Imam Bukhari says that he is the one who inspired me to compile the Sahih Bukhari. So this is that scholar. So he runs to have the honor of holding the reins of Imam Ali Rida. So you can understand, again, as I said, so those people who try to, discredit his knowledge, try to show, he was just, like a common guy. All these people that are honoring him, respecting him, of course, he's Ahlul Bayt, so they respect him, but they also know the level of knowledge that he has, or at least they know that his knowledge is greater than their knowledge. And so, he comes, and when he brings them in to the city, you literally have thousands of muhaddis gathered just to see him. And so you have thousands of these scholars there just to see him and just to hear him. And so when he arrives, they ask him, they ask him to narrate a hadith. Of course, these scholars of hadith. So they say, narrate a hadith for us that you heard from your father, who heard from his father, who heard from his father, who heard from his father, who heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So eventually father, father, until you come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the people who are the true heirs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is what? That if somebody asks, you give him more. Somebody asks for a drop, you give him a river. So these are those true heirs. So Imam Ali Rida, he stands up and he says that I Ali Rida, have heard from my father, Musa Kadhim, Imam Musa Kadhim, who heard from his father, Imam Jafar Sadiq, who heard from his father, Imam Muhammad Baqir, who heard from his father, Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin, who heard from his father, Imam Hussein al-Islam, who heard from his father, Ali Karamallahu Wajh, who heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So they asked for a hadith marfu, which, and he's giving them a hadith qudsi. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that La ilaha illallah is my fortress. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Ana Allah, that I am Allah, wahdahu la sharik, and with whom there is no partners. And La ilaha illallah is my fortress. And whoever says La ilaha illallah has entered my fortress, and whoever enters my fortress is safe, has attained my protection. So when he says this, you have all of these scholars now, Takbir, Allahu Akbar, Takbir, very so overwhelmed with joy that they have, that they will be able, or that they will have the honor of spreading this hadith forward with this chain, having heard it directly from Imam Ali Rida. So when they start and they're all overwhelmed or with joy, Imam Ali Rida says, but it has conditions, and I am one of those conditions. Meaning the love of Ahlul Bayt is a condition for the acceptance of La ilaha illallah. There is no acceptance of La ilaha illallah without Muhammadur Rasulullah. And there is no acceptance of Muhammadur Rasulullah without the love of Ahlul Bayt. And so he says, yes, but I am one of those conditions. So your love for me, which they, of course, these are scholars who love him and they know their love for him. Okay? So, and the interesting thing here is Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, who also is amongst the teachers of Imam Bukhari, who also is one of those, is a friend and indirectly a student of Imam Ali Rida. He says that this chain itself, we're not talking about the hadith itself, but just the chain, the narrations of these names itself has the power within it to cure the insane. And not just Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, but Ibn Majah, who is, the compiler of the compilation of Ibn Majah of Hadith, Muhaddis. Various other Muhaddiseen, they have the same statement, that the chain here, just the names here, have the authority or the power within them, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the power within them to cure the insane. People say, what's in a name? Everything's in the name. And if you read the Quran, then you would know that. Allah talks about all the beautiful names are His. Right? Everything is His. But these are things that are distinguished. And He has given those beautiful names to the ones that He loves. Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The word Muhammad, if you look at the definition of Muhammad, in reality is the name of Allah, the one who is excessively praised. And we say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this name to His beloved, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ali, high. You look at the 99 names that we talk about. Of course, these are just limited 99. Allah says all the names are His. You look at the 99. Ali is the name of Allah. Who did He give this name to? Ali karallahu. Ghani, rich. It's the name of Allah. Who did He give this title to? Uthman radiallahu anhu. So, again, you start looking at these titles and these names, so within this chain, again, is the authority to cure the insane. During the time of Ma'mun is when this issue comes up of Khalq Quran. That the Quran is a creation of Allah, which it is not. The Quran is Kalam of Allah, it is the word of Allah, and you cannot separate the word from Allah. The first person to give a ruling on this is Imam Ali Rida himself. Later on, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal will follow suit. And the torturing of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal over this issue is because of his support for Ahlul Bayt. Imam Ali Rida is the one who gives the fatwa that anyone who says that the Quran is khalq, it is creation, has become kafir. He has left Islam. Because he is confining or limiting the qualities of Allah. And so Imam Ali Rida is the first to give that fatwa. It'll be an interesting point afterwards. So Imam, he has also told some of his disciples that how he would be martyred. He said, I'll be poisoned. He liked grapes. He liked grapes a lot. He said, I'll be poisoned with a grape. And then when Ma'mun will want to bury me in a certain place, but he will not be able to dig the ground there. So he'll be forced to bury me close to the grave of Harun, his father. And when they dig the grave there, when they remove the top earth, the grave will already be ready. So he already told them that. And this is exactly what will happen. So he one day is in the court of Ma'mun. Again, he is, heir to the throne. And Ma'mun is eating grapes. And Ma'mun takes one of the grapes and hands it to him. And he eats the grape. And when the poison from that grape starts affecting him. So he looks at Mamun. Again, these are the heirs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now he starts giving him advice. So he says to Mamun, he says that obey Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you expect the people to have a good attitude towards you, then you must have a good attitude towards Allah. And this is something, and this is actually a hadith, where Rasulullah ﷺ said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that I am as my slave expects of me. This is why we should always expect good from Allah. You know, you have those people, you ask them, how are you? And, you know, and you regret asking them, how are you? Always complaining. The interesting thing is, if you look at the lives of those people, there's one calamity after another. Because this is what they expect. And this is what Allah gives them. Doesn't matter, you know, how good things are, they will always find, you know, that dark lining there somewhere. And they're constantly complaining. And then you see other people who never complain. And if you look at their lives, there are many difficulties in their lives, but they always, you know, they're always grateful. And from a distance, if you look at them, you feel like, oh, you know, they're all good. There's no issues. Because they expect good from their Lord, and their Lord gives them good. So this is why we should always have good expectations from Allah. No matter how bad things are going, our expectation from Allah is always good. Or always must be good. So, and then he says to him, he says that only oppress the people to that extent to which you can tolerate the punishment in the hereafter. Of course, this is what kings and leaders do, is they oppress the people. So only oppress them to that extent. You're going to oppress the people, just make sure it's as much as you can bear in the hereafter, the punishment of which. Then he says that a ruler does not attain the closeness of his subjects through strength, but he attains it through the love that he gives to the people. So then they, of course, reciprocate that love. So, you know, we look at the advice he's giving Mamun, and you can translate that. You know, it's advice that never goes old. Never, you know, it's always, you know, appropriate for any time, for any ruler, for anyone in any position of authority. And so we are all given positions of authority. So this advice extends to us. And he says that your friend is the one who tells you your faults in secret. You know, everybody, oh, this is my BFF, right? And that BFF, all they do is say, oh, you're such a great guy. That's not your friend. And especially for rulers, you know, when they surround themselves with a bunch of yes men, you know, expect failure. You know, you need to surround yourself with people who are willing to advise you with sincerity, with love, to correct you. And we all have our faults. He says to him, you know, someone who is truthful, even if he on occasion misspeaks, you know, says something that may not be totally accurate, he will still be believed. But someone who is a liar, even if he tells the truth 1,000 times, he still won't be believed. So be amongst those who are truthful. He says, spend according to your income, according to your means. You know, you look at, society today, is everybody's trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? So, income's $50,000, but they're spending like it's $200,000. And then they're in debt all the time. And then they go bankrupt. And they wonder why. I see this even amongst like doctors, people who, from a income standpoint, yeah, they're earning much more than your average person is, right? But you look at their spending, and they're spending 10 times their income. And then they're always whining. Right? And this gets back to that hadith of Rasulullah where he said that, he said that nothing fills the belly of the son of Adam except for the dirt in his grave. And we can all see this. Somebody, he's making $30,000 a year, and he thinks, oh, when I start making $60,000, I'll be set. And then he makes $60,000. Now he says, oh, I need to make $100,000. And then he makes $100,000. He says, I need to make $200,000. And when he makes $200,000, he says, I need to make $1 million. Right? It never ends. This is also why the Rasulullah said that the richest man is the one who is content. There's a huge difference between being content and being lazy. So people will go off on the extremes. Oh, well, I'm not supposed to. No, doesn't mean you need to do your thing. But you need to be pleased with whatever Allah gives you. And live within the means of whatever Allah gives you. And then he says to him, he says, and the one who tells you your faults is not your enemy. The enemy is the one who's not going to tell you your fault and then stab you in the back. Your enemy is the one who's praising you up front and stabbing you in the back. And if you look at kings and if you look at leaders, this is who they surround themselves with. A bunch of yes men. That's not who you want to surround yourself with. Because you want to improve yourself. And if you don't know what's wrong with yourself, then how are you going to improve yourself? As far as telling the faults, it depends. For someone in the public sphere, if he does something publicly, you need to be dealt with publicly. For someone in the private sphere, or even someone in the public sphere who does something privately, then deal with him privately. So depends on the situation. And there are ways of telling people, again depending on the situation. There are times to be very direct, and there are other times when you should not be direct. There was a time when people, again, and we've talked about this before, there was a time when people understood ishara, just a hint. You'd give them just a hint and they knew what they had done and what they needed to fix it. And these days, you can kick them in the leg and you can slap them across the face, and you can read the whole book to them. You can throw the book at them, and they still don't get it. So Allah protect us from that. And then he tells them in the end, he says that, he says, Mamun, you can amass all the wealth in this world that you want. all that wealth will not do you any good in the hereafter. Okay. So, of course, a lot of people, they'll take this, and I hear a lot of people talking about, oh, in the hereafter, only your deeds will benefit you. It's just your deeds. On the day of judgment, the deeds will be dealt with. But before that point in the grave, there is no question about any deeds. And the grave is the most difficult step of the hereafter. All of the questions in the grave deal with belief. And the question about Allah and the deen are just basic general questions. But the question about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very specific. What did you say in truth about this man? Or what did you know about this man? So if your aqidah about him, if you say, oh, I used to say that he didn't know what was behind his back, or that he didn't know what was on the other side of the wall, or he didn't have the knowledge of the unseen, then what did he come to teach you? The Quran says that, that about those who believe in the unseen. If I don't even know what unseen is, then how can I believe in the unseen? Who's going to tell me what the unseen is other than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Or that, oh, I used to say that he didn't have the authority to even break a twig in two. Do you think that answer is going to be acceptable? No. For those who answer the questions in the grave correctly, then on the day of judgment they will be asked about their deeds. Now to decide, okay, because right there in the grave, either it becomes a garden from paradise or a piece of hell. Right there. So now once those questions have been answered, and that's been established, now the question is, okay, what part of paradise will so-and-so fall in because he answered all the questions correctly, because his aqidah, his belief is correct? Or, okay, what part of hell is he going to go to? Was he a hypocrite or just a mushrik or whatever? So what part of hell is he going to go to because he missed the answers in the grave? That is why those questions in the hereafter will be, to deal with that aspect of things. But if you fail the first part, your deeds are not going to do you any good on that day. And this is what a lot of us forget. And this is what Imam Ali Rida is telling Mamun. He says the hereafter. He doesn't go into any detail as to okay, there your deeds will do this and that. No, he says in the hereafter, all this wealth isn't going to do you any good. It's your iman, your aqidah, the way you believed. And then secondary, your deeds. Right? So this occurred as they were on their way back from Khurasan towards Baghdad, which was the center of the capital of the empire, and the center of basically also the control of the Arabian aspect of the empire as well, or the Arab part of the empire. So as they're on their way back, he is conveniently poisoned. And then, so they start trying to dig a grave for him. Can't dig, and exactly as he said, the initial spot that they're digging, they can't dig it. And then, so they have to bury him close to Harun Rashid. And this is what Imam Ali Rida was talking about when Harun left the court. He said, he's running today, where is he going to go later on? He's going to end up next to me. So his grave is in Mashhad, which is if you look at the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, Many of them are buried in Kufa, Baghdad, that area. Some of them are buried in Medina Munawwara. He is the only one who's an outlier, who's buried away from the rest of them. And this is why. Any questions to this point? There are a few other things I'm going to say, but any questions to this point?
I got a quick one. When he said he told him he can't be buried here, it's going to be here. When they come in a situation, like you said, they tried it, and everything he said was true. Is that, would they be considered not believing him, or just the situation that they was put in to actually see what he said was true?
A little bit of both. Just like with, and we see this, and we spoke about this a little bit before as well. Not today, but, previous weeks. Like with Sayyidina Ali Karamallah Wajh, when he fought the Battle of Nahwan. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had already told him what was going to happen. He had already told his men what was going to happen. Okay, but Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had also already told him the defects of one of the leaders of the enemy. His arms would be such, and the skin on the arms, and the skin other places, and all of this. So after the battle, he has his men go look. They couldn't find him, so he himself goes, digs him out of a pile, and holds him up to show everybody that nothing that comes from the lips of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam can be wrong. Okay. To establish that, so if anybody has any doubts, okay. So the same way, with these people, you're always going to have doubters, and then you're going to have other people who, they know. And this also sort of gets to that point where, when we had spoken about Misam, who was the slave that Ali Rida had bought and freed. I don't know if you remember that or not. Okay. So when Ali Rida enters Kufa, he sees this woman with this slave, and the slave was, kind of from that general area. And so Ali Rida goes up to the woman and asks her, how much do you want to sell him for? And she says 50 dinar, which was an expensive price. And he calmly says, fine. And when she sees how calmly he says that, she says, let's make it 100. He says, okay. 150. Okay. 200. Okay. Eventually, 400. He says, fine. And he gives her 400. Okay. So 400 or 500? 500. 500. Okay, so he gives her 500. All right. So, which is exorbitant amount. But he gives it to her. And so the slave, he comes up to him and he says, why did you do this? Why did you, buy my freedom? He says, what's your name? He says, Salim. And Ali then says, no, tell me the name that Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told me, which is Mitham. And so Salim says, who is Mitham? He says, no one knows me by that name here. This was the name that my mother gave me. How do you know that name? He says, because Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told me about you. And Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also told him how he would be killed. And Ali Adam passed that on to Mitham. And so the way he is killed is, he is one of those who is in Kufa at the time that Imam Hussein al-Islam comes to Karbala. Or is on his way to Karbala. Ibn Ziyad, who was sent as the governor by Yazid, he, finds out that he's a supporter of Ali and Hussein alayhi salam. And so he talks to him, and he's singing, of course, Mitham is singing the praises of Ali radiallahu anhu. So he orders that his hands and his feet be cut off. And he does. His hands and feet. And when his hands and feet are cut off, he says to Ibn Ziyad, he says, this is no surprise to me, because my master told me that you would do this. And he would have said he would also cut off my tongue. And he told me which tree you would hang me from. And so the only area that you had supporters of Ibn Ziyad that he could hang the guy. They hung him upside down from a tree in that area. And as he's hanging upside down, he's singing the praises of Ali, and one of the guys there who was supportive of Ibn Ziyad comes to Ibn Ziyad and says, look, you need to cut his tongue out. He says, look, if I cut his tongue out, then Ali will be truthful. He says, if you don't cut his tongue out, then the people will turn against you. And so he's forced to cut his tongue out, exactly as Rasulullah had told Ali Rida, who had told me. Okay. So even though he doesn't want to do it, he's still forced to do it, because nothing that comes from the lips of Rasulullah can be wrong. And these are people who are inheritors of that true knowledge. So when he's saying these things, this is knowledge that didn't just come out of the air for him. He didn't just pull it out of somewhere. He is given this knowledge. And so even though he tells these people, okay, you have people that are in denial, say, nah, we'll just, we'll do it here anyway. And what did he know, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows them, what did he know? The knowledge isn't just, something, he didn't pick up a book and read, it sounds good, right? This is that special knowledge that is passed down. And so, so then eventually, exactly as he had said, so this is why, his tomb or his mazar or burial place is right next to Harun. Of course, the interesting thing is everybody comes to see him, no one pays attention to Harun. Just like during their lifetimes. All the decent people would come to see him. None of the decent people spent wanted to see Harun. Same thing with all the decent people came to see him. None of the decent people wanted to see Mamun. So you can imagine, the jealousy that kind of boiled within them. Just like when Imam Zain al-Abidin, and we talked about this before, when he enters the Kaaba, and everybody makes way for him. And Hisham, who's the crown prince, says, who is this? Right? Yeah. Not because he doesn't know, he knew who it was. So he's buried there in Khurasan. Again, he's the only one who of these imams who's buried, that far from any of the rest of them. Interesting point here. Okay, so when he's martyred, it's the year 202 or 203 Hijri. I'm going to connect this to Imam Shafi in a second. So if you remember, Imam Shafi is born 150, so 2 years after him. Imam Shafi is martyred in Egypt 2 years before him. If you look at these four scholars of fiqh, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, they were all tortured or killed because of their support for Ahlul Bayt. There's another scholar of Hadith, Ibn Hibban, very great scholar of Hadith, who came around roughly about 100 years after Imam Ali Rida. He's from that area, he's from Khurasan. Well-known scholar of Hadith, he's compiled various collections of Hadith, including Sayyid Ibn Hibban. And he says that when he was studying in that area in Tus, which is close to Mashhad, he says whenever he would get stuck on an issue, he would come and visit Imam Ali Rida, the graveside of Imam Ali Rida, and through the blessings from that place, because of the presence of Imam Ali Rida, all of those issues would be solved. For those who say, you grave worshippers, right? Well, this is Ibn Hibban, who is a great muhaddis, scholar of hadith. who came after these other scholars of hadith, so he knows the hadith that they've compiled. But the difference is he understands the hadith that they've compiled. He understands the Quran, so that's why he does this. Because he knows that there's nothing wrong, and not only that there's nothing wrong, this is something that is good. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us this. You know, he would visit the graves of the Shuhada of Uhud frequently. He would visit the graves of Jannatul Baqi frequently. Of course, for him, it's not like he's attaining something, he's giving them things. In our situation, we are attaining things because our position is, you know, our position. Okay. So Ibn Hibban says this. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullah alayh, you know, he was born in Makkah. He studied in Medina Munawwara, including under Imam Malik. He goes to Kufa to study. He's accused of being Shia. And then eventually is forced to go to Egypt because of the accusations. And when he's accused of being Shia because of his support for Ahlul Bayt, you know, his response is that if loving Ahlul Bayt is being Shia, or being Rafzi, because they accused him not of any Shia, of Rafzi, which are the, you know, kind of the extreme worst kinds. He says, if being Rafzi means to love Ahlul Bayt, then I am the greatest Rafzi. Alright? So Imam Shafi says, and this is mentioned by Ibn Hajar Haythami. Ibn Hajar Haythami is a scholar of the Shafi madhab. He is one of the two scholars who, you know, who have basically compiled the rulings of the Shafi madhab. He was Imam in Makkah for 40 years. You know, again, he is if you look at knowledge, pretty much a lot of knowledge comes through him through all of these lands, as far as hadith and fiqh. Okay? So Imam Ibn Hajar Haythami, also known as Ibn Hajar Makki, he writes that Imam Shafi said that whenever he would get stuck on an issue, he would go to the mazar or the graveside of Imam Abu Hanifa and make 2 rakat salat to Allah, and his problems would be solved. You know, eventually he's, of course, basically exiled. He moves to Egypt, to Cairo, which is where he's martyred and then buried there. Imam Shafi is. But Imam Shafi had a very close connection with Ahlul Bayt as well. In fact, you know, when he goes to Egypt, to Cairo, there was a scholaress of hadith, Sayyida Nafisa, who is from the lineage of Imam Hassan al-Islam, and she is the wife of Imam Ishaq, who is the son of Imam Jafar Sadiq. So she's the daughter-in-law of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And she teaches hadith, and he learns hadith from her, Imam Shafi does, to the extent that when, you know, because they jumped on him and basically ruptured his organs inside, when he knows he's about to pass, one of his request was that after you bathe me and shroud me, then take my body to her house and have her pray over me before the Salatul Janazah. Because she is from that household, you know, one of those scholaresses from that household. And he learned from her. So again, this isn't just any household. But I just, you know, I mentioned some things in the beginning to remember. You know, like I said, there are people who try to downgrade the position of Imam Ali Rida, like, oh, he's just anybody, not really a scholar. I mean, I mean, you look at the scholars of the time; they all acknowledged him as their master. And we're not just talking any scholars. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, as I said, Ishaq ibn Raway, all of these scholars of hadith. And these are teachers of Imam Bukhari. They are the ones who acknowledge him as their master. So, inshallah, I'll end here unless there are any other questions. Yeah. So his son is Imam Muhammad Taqi or Imam Muhammad Jawad, and inshallah we'll talk about him later, probably next week, inshallah. So that's and these are names that we really should memorize. You look at, and I'll just run through them very quickly. You look at the when we talk about like the 12 Imams, of course, Ali, Karamallah, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and then the rest of them are from the lineage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We talk about the 12, except when we come to Imam Mahdi. Okay. So after Imam Hussein alayhi salam, you have Imam Zain al-Abidin, whose name is also Ali, and then you have Imam Muhammad Baqir, Imam Jafar Sadiq, Imam Musa Kadhim, Imam Ali Rida is the one we spoke about today. His son is Imam Muhammad Taqi, also known as Imam Muhammad Jawad. His son will be Imam Ali Naqi, and then his son will be Imam Hassan Askari. So that makes 11. And then the 12th will be Imam Mahdi. And of course, Imam Mahdi on his father's side will be from the lineage of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, and from his mother's side will be from the lineage of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
How do we learn about these names? Like we want to know more. Would it be they mentioned in the hadith to learn about them, or how?
Well, some of them are mentioned in the hadith. So, like if you remember, like we spoke about the hadith where Rasulullah ﷺ says that, telling Jabir ibn Abdullah that this son of mine, meaning Imam Hussein alayhi salam, will have a son, and on the day of judgment, an angel will come forward and proclaim that, oh Sayyidul Abidin, oh master of the worshippers, come forward and enter paradise. And he will come forward and take a large multitude with him to paradise. And then he says, and that son will have a son whose name will be upon my own, which means Muhammad. And he says to Jabir, he says, oh Jabir, you will meet him, and when you do, give him my salam. And so we see this occurrence, and that occurrence is mentioned in the hadith in Sahih Muslim, that meeting. And so, and then you have, there are other hadiths that mention that, so-and-so, they will be born, from my lineage, such and such, who will do such and such. So you have those various narrations. The problem is, these days that people say, oh, those are weak narrations. And what's been drilled into people's heads is that, if it's weak, then that means, oh, you can't follow it, or that it's abrogated, or that's not abrogated, it's fabricated. So a lot of people these days, they can't distinguish between mawdu, which is fabricated, and daif, which means weak. And daif can be weak, for multitude of reasons. It may be that, that the wording isn't quite right. It may be that, there's someone in the chain that is missing. It may be that there's someone in the chain that his memory was questionable. So there are multiple reasons why it may be weak. It's interesting, like if you talk to most Muslims who've grown up Muslim, and as well as a lot of new Muslims, whether they take ghusl or, bathe on the day of Eid, and they will tell you yes. Well, the hadith is daif, it's weak. But Imam Tirmizi, when he mentions the hadith, he writes the hadith, he says, yes, the hadith is weak, but this has been the practice of the Muslims from the beginning. So there's this notion amongst people these days, because of certain groups that carry a lot of money and, you know, have bought a lot of scholars and you know, and other things, you know, that this is this notion that's amongst the people. So if you look at a lot of these hadiths, you know, you don't see them in Bukhari or Muslim. But why don't you see them in Bukhari or Muslim? The reason you don't see them in Bukhari or Muslim is because you have control of Banu Abbas, who again were in a situation where they knew that they had stolen the kingdom from these people. So they didn't want these people praised. And if anybody praised those people, well, you know, either dead or imprisoned. And their writings were destroyed. So this is why, you know, when you look at, and we've talked about this before multiple times, when you look at hadith, the hadith books, you know, they'll say, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which means Rasulullah said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, meaning peace and blessings be upon him. You never see Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, that peace and blessings be upon him and upon his family. Because this was a government mandate. You can't write that. Because if you wrote that, then it would remind the people of who they are. And they didn't want that. You know, they wanted people to forget them, to try to legitimize their own position. So a lot of these scholars went along with it because they said, well, we need to get the knowledge passed on. And, you know, because there were scholars who were killed over this, other scholars who were in prison, writings that were destroyed. But Imam Bukhari sneaks it in the content, because the hadith where Rasulullah says that your darood is not complete unless you include my family, is in Sahih Bukhari. So he sneaks it in there. But again, he has to comply with the government mandate. Yeah, if he wants to keep his head. So you have a lot of this that's going on. And most people, you know, when you start talking about this, you know, they're clueless. Any other questions? After Mamun will be, the other thing that I forgot, that reminds me, because you have Mu'tasim and a few others, they're like half brothers, who are all savages. And he placed them there because they were savages. And we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the others. So shortly after the passing or the martyrdom of Imam Ali Rida, as we mentioned, he's already given that fatwa that anyone who says that the Quran is khalq, is creation, is kafir. Okay? And here we're not talking about the writing. We're talking about the Quran. Okay? So shortly after this is when Mamun is surrounded by these scholars who say, you know, and these advisors who say, yeah, the Quran is khalq. And so he promotes these scholars and promotes this ideology. Because just like today, like, you know, like in certain kingdoms, you have certain scholars that are pushed because they push a certain agenda. And that agenda helps, and those scholars help maintain the king in his position, and the king maintains these scholars in their position, so they're all comfortable. You get a little spat here or there, but that's just for show. You know, it's like you know, like professional wrestling these days. Yeah, it's just for show. Keep the drama going. Okay. Anything else?
How old was Imam Ali Rida?
Imam Ali Rida, when he was martyred, was lunar year-wise, he was like around 55, right around 55. Solar year-wise, he was like 52 or 53. Young. Yeah. but oceans of knowledge, and that he passed on to people that themselves became seas of knowledge. So inshallah we'll end here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and fill our hearts with His true love and the true love of His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May He allow us to understand and to love Ahlul Bayt and to love Sahaba Ikram, and may He give protection to our brothers and sisters that are being oppressed throughout the world, in Gaza and wherever, in Palestine and wherever the Muslims are being oppressed, and give them victory over their oppressors. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.